The month of January brought us some major vintage sales, and we gotta talk about it. A major movie release that caused a lot of spike in specific wrestling sales. Free Panini Prism hype WWE products that were still put out by Panini going bonkers. Fans of that Bingo Hall promotion continue to be just as hardcore collectors as that promotion was, and have some recent controversies outside of the hobby actually related back into the hobby itself. This is the Wrestling Card Market Watch for January 2024. What's up, wrestling fans, trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. First Wrestling Card Market Watch of the new year. Well, technically not there. We had the one that came out in January, but this is the first one that we're covering of 2024 sales, and we have a lot to talk about. But just in case this is your first time stopping by, each month I do one of these videos looking back at the past month's sales to kind of pick out some interesting sales or interesting cards and bring to light some talking points that maybe we can expand on, or maybe you learn more as a collector or look at things from a different perspective that isn't just this sold for this, this is the highest selling this. No, no, no. I want to dig in and find out why. And hopefully some of this information better serves you within your hobby journey moving forward. January 2024 didn't disappoint. Let's get it. Headline sale of the month, Von Eric Mania is running wild. So unless you are a wrestling fan that's somehow been living under a rock, I'm pretty sure we've all heard of this movie called The Ironclaw. It features Zac Efron, a jacked Zac Efron, may I add, and a lot of other big-name actors that contributed to telling the story of the Von Erich family. And the wrestling world has been a buzz about this. And people can say what they want about it. I know I've seen the criticisms out there, such as, oh, that guy did not do a good job playing Ric Flair. The guy that played Carrie was way too small. Where was Chris Von Erich? Why did they waste MJF's time as being the worst Von Erich, the fake Von Erich, Lance Von Erich? And I could go on with the ridiculous nitpicking that I've seen wrestling fans say about this movie. But the fact of the matter is that this movie put wrestling back in the mainstream's eyes. And you may be saying, well, have you looked at the numbers that Raw does? Have you looked at the numbers that Royal Rumble did? I understand that. But when you're getting wrestling into regular person movie theaters that are outside of that wrestling bubble, that's what it takes to get wrestling more popular. And look back at the Attitude Era. Think about how many people you knew, if you lived through that, who were having Nitro parties or Raw parties or pay-per-view parties, and you were getting families in there. You were getting, I'll say, casual wrestling fans in there to watch these things. It was a spectacle. But not only that, this movie also took people on a journey back in time to kind of either learn more about what wrestling was kind of like in the 80s, or to relive some nostalgic past. Maybe somebody grew up watching World Class and they really enjoyed the Von Erichs, and they got to, I know it's a little bit of a sad story, but they got to relive the good times through this movie. And say what you want about vintage wrestling cards. I know there's a lot of people out there that hate them, and there's a lot of people that hate classic wrestling. But if it wasn't for those two things, we wouldn't have wrestling cards or modern wrestling like we have it today. And I always think that both modern fans and modern collectors should spend the time to kind of go back and learn the history about wrestling cards and about wrestling in general, the territory days, even prior to that. But not only that, this movie, maybe most importantly, stirred up nostalgia. And just like other sports moments or pop culture moments in time, once that nostalgic moment hits and it connects you with something, people start looking to buy things and collect that they can represent with that moment. And like I said, Von Erich Mania started running wild. Let's take a look at some interesting sales of items that are related to Von Erich or related to this movie that I found. The Von Erich Family Album, $299 with $8.30 shipping. What's funny is I did not know this existed, and I think it's just like a photo album type thing. But what was really great is I saw this at an Alamo, and I don't know what theater, if you watched that movie, what theater you went to see, but the Alamo was playing old wrestling clips and tons of Von Erich clips, and some I had known about. But like this one I hadn't seen before. And I was like, why would somebody be that invested in a photo album? And then, again, Von Erich Mania kicks in, and I remember how big of a deal they were back in the 80s with World Class. And then apparently with this movie release and that commercial that played in that movie theater, people were going out and buying these things on eBay and paying big bucks for them. Ironclaw foam hand promo item, $79 with $7 shipping. Promo items are always a big thing within any segment of collecting, but having that claw look and the design of the foam finger, or the foam hand, I guess, in this case, which is a classic wrestling staple for a souvenir gimmick table thing. You gotta love it. Not to mention, this is a collectible that's actually associated not only with the Von Erichs, of course, but more from the actual movie because I believe this was put out by A24. Von Eric Family Comic Book, $59 with $10.95 shipping. Again, I was born in the 80s and I did not see World Class it wasn't until years later when I started doing tape trading that I was able to get some old World Class stuff. So while I grew up in that era, I wasn't able to see a lot of it. But this is another example, kind of like the photo album that I just talked about. Von Eric Mania was something that we may never see again, just because of the way the world is and the way that we have all these forms of entertainment. But it was, I mean, from what I can hear from other people that kind of live that stuff, the Von Erichs were kind of like the Beatles to a lot of people. And the fact that they could put out Von Eric anything and it would sell. I mean, here we Von Eric comic books. Are you kidding me? Now I know they all kind of look like superheroes. We've heard that kind of thrown around within wrestling. They're real life superheroes. They look like superheroes with their physique and everything. But here you have the actual Von Eric comic book, and you gotta love that. Ironclaw movie poster, $39.28 with $26.02 shipping. That's all in Australian currency. Tie in with that A24 Ironclaw exclusive collectible, $49.95. Not to mention, there's also an A24 exclusive Zack Efron as Kevin Von Eric wrestling figure coming out. I think it looks pretty cool. It's a little expensive. I don't know that I want to shell out that amount of money for it, but maybe I do. Maybe this is something that I look at that figure and, I've got the one Karrion Kross figure back there, or Turbo Man, if you want to count that. I don't buy a lot of figures anymore. I've talked about why in numerous other videos in the archives of this channel and interviews I've done for other content. But, it's about that connection. And I loved my time in the theater reliving the Von Eric story. I know it's sad, but it's so much nostalgia and what wrestling is all about. So maybe I go out and buy that figure. But the fact that a movie company knows what wrestling fans like and what they want, and they're willing to put these things out there, the wrestling fans are buying them, it's a total win. Von Eric Mania is going nuts. I set this up like a wrestling card. All of those previous sales and cool Von Eric items lead up to the main event Von Eric item, which you could probably guess. 1982 Wrestling All-Stars, Carrie Von Eric, PSA 9, $3,999. However, a best offer of $3,000 was accepted. So as you could see, the wave of nostalgia and the connecting with wrestling and the Von Eric family, it really hit with this movie. And you can also see that it produced an interest for a wide variety of collectibles related to the movie and Von Erichs, which I love. You've got to love variety. Again, look behind me at all the random collectibles that I have that I connect with. And I know this is kind of sales driven, but my talking point here is that it has nothing to do with sales. What something sold for? Is it flippable? Is it a good investment? It's just exciting that people want these things. And again, the fact that a mainstream movie release could drum up this much interest in an 80s wrestling family that, let's face it, most people, they know Hulk Hogan, they might know The Rock, but when it comes to wrestling, maybe they don't have that history and they don't know the story of the Von Erich family, and this movie did that. And with drumming up that nostalgic thing and that memories and those moments that people connect with, I think the future is very bright for wrestling cards, of course, but other wrestling collectibles as well, and people going out finding things that they can connect with to tell that story of that moment in time and relive it every day. And could we see more major wrestling releases in the future in theaters? Kind of like we did with this one. I think it was a good example. I think so. It would be awesome to see what else is going to be out there and what we could see in the future as wrestling fans, major releases. And what does that do? Does that draw more people into cards? Does that draw even more people? What if they do something that maybe it's something about Hogan or The Rock or Vince, we'll talk about that later, but something that kind of spurs people to go out and remember, oh, I loved wrestling. Let me start buying some cards. Man, I remember playing with my figures, watching Saturday night's main event. I want to go buy wrestling figures now. Anything to just get people collecting. And even if they don't have that collecting gene, something that they can attach with, have fun with, and kind of take that break from their normal everyday life, have that thing that they can always just look at and be like, man, this is it. Totally awesome sale of the month, 1997 ECW Japan VHS wrestling cards, complete set, $610 with $392 shipping. I'm a big fan of this set. Of course, I'm an ECW mark. I did a whole video dissecting the cards and talking about the cards within this set. You can check that out in the archives of this channel. I love this set, the lore and the story that kind of comes behind it. And I've seen a lot of people really start going after these cards that maybe I didn't think were the biggest ECW fans, but hey, Maybe they're all out there and they're just not as vocal about it. A few years ago, people did not know these existed, and now people are seeking them out and opening their wallets. That being said, I'm not really chasing this set. I originally wanted to get it, but just for a few different reasons, I'm not really going after it anymore. But the fact that there are more people kind of talking about this set within the community, it's drummed up interest with other people. Like, maybe they're just collecting Panini stuff, right? They're in these private groups, or they, watch some of my videos and listen to some guests that I have on this channel. Again, check out all the great archives for great interviews with other collectors. But maybe, just the involvement kind of gets their mind thinking, oh yeah, I loved ECW back in the day. I want to connect with ECW. What can I do? Just like we had talked about with the Von Erics. Maybe people are going out and buying this set to tie that memory of ECW. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, but it also ties in the lore of they came from Japan. They were only available within VHS releases. And I just think that's really cool. But I love the fact that ECW talent, remember, Bingo Hall. Many people consider these guys the misfits. They weren't real wrestlers. All of these small shows, just blood and guts. The fact that the entertainment that they brought me personally can live on forever in cardboard form in people's minds when they connect with those cards that they have, absolutely love it. But not only that, I think this also kind of signifies that people are starting to lean into what they really want to collect. And maybe they're starting to look more at the things of the past. And when I say past, I'm talking like even 2018 Topps WWE releases, whatever it is. I think people are starting, and maybe that's a good thing that we've had this drought a little bit with Panini and WWE and licensing and Upper Deck taking years to get products out. Maybe that lull has actually been a good thing because it caused some people to stop and realize, man, I love cards, but I just can't keep up with these breaks, and I don't want to wait to get more breaks going. Maybe I just want to look back at some of the old sets and find something that I connect with. And with that being said, I think wrestling cards as a whole have a huge future, very bright future within the collecting community ahead if people can continue to just focus on that. Again, we've heard this a million times. I've said it's kind of cliche, the whole collect what you want. But in my opinion, that's really what drives the passion of collecting. I think if you're focused on the dollar signs alone, or you're focused on new products and breaks alone, that's all you want to do because of that dopamine hit, you're going to kind of fall short of the joy that you can have just by building a collection of no matter whatever it is. You want to super collect, you want to set collect, you want to maybe promotion collect, like what we're talking about here, just going after ECW stuff. There are a lot of good people out there on Instagram and Twitter that I've seen that do nothing but collect ECW stuff, and it's really fun to watch from an outside perspective. So again, I think if people can, maybe it is modern product, okay? Maybe they're just a huge Cody Rhodes fan, and that's where all of that stuff is in more modern product. Just leaning into collecting what it is that truly brings them joy, no matter what that is. As long as people can continue to do that, I think the hobby as a whole, and more specifically wrestling cards, to the moon, so to speak. Oh, maybe I shouldn't use that term. Oh. If you're enjoying this video, if you like that Jeff Jarrett clip that I use all the time, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and spread the word. Tell a friend about this channel, about wrestling cards. Just get more people to kind of form a community around wrestling cards. And then if they want more information or silly Jeff Jarrett style entertainment, the best, they can come here. Surprising sale of the month, 1995 Panini WWF lot of 11 PSA graded cards, $3,500. Similar to the ECW set that I had just spoke about, I did a whole video talking about this set with Paul and Anand from WTC TV, the Wrestling Card Price Guide. Make sure to go check out our conversation in the archives of this channel where we covered as much as we could about this more rare Panini set. Yes, that's right. Panini had WWE products way before those 97 Rock stickers and way before Prism. But when we talked about this set, one of the questions that kind of came up was, is this the rarest wrestling card set out there? At the time that we had recorded that original video, you just didn't see a lot of these popping up. There weren't very many out there, if any. Fast forward to now, time of recording this, and we've seen a lot of these surface. Not only that, but they're being graded with many of them in PSA slabs. And while these are some really cool, old school, original Panini WWF wrestling cards, I think there's some other things we need to talk about within this. And that being supply and demand. And you could really take what we're going to talk about within this and spread that across anything within the hobby. You can look at graded cards and the pop reports on those. You could look at older vintage sets such as this one. You could even look at unnumbered SSPs in more modern releases. And the fact that the availability and the pricing on these things is truly unpredictable. Just like with this Panini set, me and Paul in that previous video had talked about how you just don't see very many of these surface. Now there are several out there, not only that, but they're graded. And when you stop and you talk about just graded cards in general, we have several examples of where somebody said, oh, well, this is a pop 1, it's super rare, it's super scarce. But when you fast forward, a lot of those cards, yeah, they still are a pop 1 or a pop 2 or a pop 3. But then there are also cards that we were told how expensive and rare and sought after and blah, 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 because it's a pop 1, pop 2, pop 3. All of a sudden, fast forward, now it's a pop 15. What does that do? Generally, it drives prices down, and it drives the people who want them down, because there are just more of them. Similarly, you could look at this kind of talking point and kind of roll that into some autos. For example, let's say the 1994 WWF Action-Packed Undertaker card. Out of 500, but I guarantee you won't find 500 at any given time. WWF certified pack pulled auto, you gotta love that. And it's a great image of the Undertaker. But that being said, fast forward from 1994 until now and look at all of the Undertaker autographs out there that are available. You got the stuff in modern products, be it sticker or on card. You've got the Undertaker signing all of these cards if people are willing to pay for that at these personal signings or these conventions or wherever he's at. And in turn, what has that done? It's driven down the price of a lot of his autographs because there's just so much out there, and it gets to the point where the supply is outpacing the demand. Oh, and remember those 97 WWF Panini stickers that everybody wanted the rookie card of The Rock in? How have those done on the secondary market lately? Or even if, like, 3 weeks after the initial one sold. I think Rob England had like the biggest selling one at the time, and they've just plummeted since then. I say all that to say this. If you want these cards, these Panini ones, Modern Prism, Wrestling All-Stars, those 97 Panini stickers, no matter what it is, if you want those for the sake of having them in your collection, super collector, set collecting, you just want them to remember something of the past. And again, going back to the Von Eric example, tying in that moment of nostalgia and memories, go get the cards. Doesn't matter if it's a pop 1, pop 30,000. Get what you want, buy what you connect with. And on the graded front, if you're wanting to work on a set registry or complete a set or whatever that is, go for it. Buy whatever you need to. But when you're looking at these kind of things, be it availability or pop reports or whatever it is, again, maybe it's those modern SSPs that we see in the Panini products that, or even some maybe Upper Deck products, they don't maybe have a print run or a serial number stamp on them, but we're told they're rare and they're maybe, you know, it's a case hit or there's only 20 available or whatever. If you're looking at all of those things as maybe a good investment, as a flipping opportunity, maybe, but I would just be careful because as we've seen with this example of these Panini cards, those 97 WWE Panini stickers, just because something is a pop 1, just because somebody's only found one case available at the time, doesn't mean that other things are going to not come out of the woodwork later on and escalate those pop reports. So again, do whatever you want, have fun collecting, but just be careful with certain aspects of higher end cards or rare cards. Again, just because it's a low pop, low print run that we're told. Questionable sale of the month, 2019 WWE fully loaded Vince McMahon auto, $5,999 with $7.99 shipping. However, a best offer of $2,250 was accepted. Wow. Where to start with this one? For the longest time, myself and others have talked about how underrated and how cool the Vince McMahon autos are within these Topps products being fully loaded and transcendent. I think they're great looking cards, and still they're fairly rare. He just doesn't sign very much, specifically with these official released cards. However, with the more recent news, and maybe we continue to get more news coming out about Vince McMahon, of stuff we won't talk about on this channel, I now wonder, how are collectors and investors going to approach Vince stuff? For the longest time, wrestling cards and wrestling collectibles have been a little bit immune to anything that happens in the real life and how that affects the value, or how it affects the collector base and the demand for that person's cards, or figures, or whatever collectible. People joke, Charizard can't tear an ACL. Harry Potter's not going out and getting into a bar fight. Basically, the downside of a fictional character as a collectible is very low, especially when you compare that to what happens in sports cards with real life athletes going out and doing things that they shouldn't, or on-field performance, winning, losing, injuries, etc. And another prime prime example of how wrestling was not affected by this was if you go back and you look at the Dark Side of the Ring episode, The Plane Ride from Hell. After that episode aired, there were a lot of people that were furious with Ric Flair and the allegations that were thrown at him in that episode. Yet when that happened, out of curiosity, I went back and started looking at some more recent Ric Flair sales during that time period, and they actually, if not stayed the same, went up in some cases. What does that say about wrestling fans or wrestling card collectors? I don't know. However, this stuff with Vince, maybe a little bit different story. We have recently seen a ton of Vince stuff come to market, again, more specifically the Transcendent and Fully Loaded autos. And that begs the question, why? Why has all of this stuff all of a sudden come out of the woodwork and become available? Well, obviously, the first answer to that is people want to dump Vince stuff. Nobody wants to associate with him anymore. People want to scrub Vince from wrestling history and the WWE. But that being said, when you look at the prices that some of these people are asking for this Vince stuff, it's not in the same category like you would normally see people wanting to dump things. Normally, you would see a lot of people throwing that card up on eBay, 99 cents, letting it run, whatever happens, happens. They just want to get rid of it. But a lot of this Vince, Transcendent, and Fully Loaded stuff that's coming out is actually pretty high priced considering all things that are going on right now. But on the flip side, maybe people are doing just the opposite of what I said. Maybe they're not wanting to dump the Vince stuff because they don't want to be associated with him anymore, but maybe they're actually trying to flip that because of him being in the news. And, you know, I just talked about Ric Flair, basically these allegations against him, all of a sudden his cards are staying the same, if not going up. So maybe they're taking that same approach with Vince because they know wrestling fans, for the most part, seem to be able to separate the real life person from the on-screen talent. But I'm not sure if we can do that with Vince in this case. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing out hypotheticals. It's just a really interesting dynamic that I don't know that there's a correct answer for. For me personally, I had the dual auto of the Vince rookie card, that 85 OPG that featured Hogan and Vince on it, with Hogan with his feet on the desk. And it was autographed by both of them. It was a great card. It was one of my favorite cards in the collection. But I had sold this way before any of this happened, and it wasn't because I predicted any of it. It wasn't because I had lost any interest in Vince in general. It was more so just personal reasons. I had a move coming up, and I had a lot of things I had to pay for, so that card came in handy. And I reached out to a collector that I know would pay a strong price and that would love to have that card in their collection. But that being said, when I did sell it, this was after the TKO thing, so Vince was still in limbo. So it wasn't like the allegations that we know about Vince now had surfaced. But there was still that controversy, but yet people still wanted Vince. And up until recently, since I've sold that Vince card, even when I sold that Vince Hogan dual auto that I had, I still wanted that Vince McMahon Transcendent or Fully Loaded auto. I still wanted to have one in my collection. And now, I just don't know. This is truly one of the first times I can remember a company trying to completely blacklist such a huge name within their company and the founder. Again, most of the time, wrestling fans are quick to forget the past and be able to separate the person, the real life person, from that on-screen character that they associate with, that they have the cards of. And it does kind of make me think twice about buying one. Maybe, again, this has more to do for like the stuff I have going on, like, you know, trying to go into the hobby more full-time, selling on eBay, and finances, like moving stuff around and focusing different areas on my collection. Maybe Vince, for whatever reason, just isn't fitting my PC anymore. Or maybe there is an underlying morality thing that I'm not really talking about yet. I don't know. Like, maybe subconsciously I don't want to own one of these because of what's happened. It's definitely not from like an investment thing. I know a lot of people said that, and maybe I've said that in the past, that Vince autos maybe are a good investment. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. That's not why I'm interested in a Vince auto. I would want it just for the collection. So maybe I do eventually get one. I don't know. It's just a weird, interesting dichotomy that we're all in right now when we're looking at Vince autos. What do you think about Vince McMahon autos or any of the other cards or topics that I've touched on in today's video? Leave a comment below with your thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear from you. And when you're done doing that, make sure to check out all of the links in the show notes for all of the other ways you can help show your support to keep this content coming out and supporting what I do. Links to my eBay store, links to Patreon for even more content, links to my social platforms, and much more. If today's video brought you some value and some entertainment, hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and spread the word. Tell a friend about this channel, tell a friend about wrestling cards. And until next time, click the videos on the screen for more great wrestling card content in the archives of this here channel, and I'll see you in those videos.